Now we return to our top story and the ongoing tensions with Iran. Nick Schifrin is back with a look at where this stands 3 days after the killing of General Soleimani.
Judy, we look at how the killing has impacted the region and specifically Iran, Iraq, and the U.S., and we get two views. Ryan Crocker had an almost 40-year career as an American diplomat. He served as an ambassador to Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, and Lebanon. He's now a diplomat in residence at Princeton University. He was unable to make it to his studio tonight and joins us on the phone. And Narges Bajoli is a professor of Middle East Studies at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. She is the author of Iran Reframed: Anxieties of Power in the Islamic Republic. Welcome to you both. Thanks very much. Welcome to the NewsHour. Narges Bajoli, let me start with you. We heard from the Iranian ambassador to the UN earlier, Judy's interview, talking about how he's blaming European partners for not delivering enough for them to stay in the nuclear deal. Remind us, is this Iran closing the door on the nuclear deal?
Well, I think it's important. I actually thought that after the assassination of Soleimani that they would potentially completely pull out of the deal. What they announced on Sunday was interesting because they haven't pulled out of the deal. And what they have decided to do is stay within the framework of the deal and make it so that, as actually the ambassador said, if other parties to the deal come back to the table, he means mostly the United States, and lift the sanctions against Iran, that they would be willing to go back to the full framework of the JCPOA. The reason that he's blaming the Europeans, though, in this is that once the Trump administration began to impose maximum pressure and especially the economic sanctions against Iran, they were hoping that the Europeans would come to their aid and relieve some of those sanctions. And even though Europe has done the Instex and tried to create a special purpose vehicle to get around it, it still has not really taken off. And so I think that that's part of the reason that they've been blaming the Europeans for this.
Ambassador Crocker, so a little bit of ambiguity in how Iran is approaching this moment when it comes to the nuclear deal, but what are the implications of their further eroding the commitments that they once agreed to?
I think that if Iran were to pursue its stated desire to pull out of the deal completely or to start violating all of its terms, they would be making a major strategic mistake that will alienate the Europeans and many other countries around the world, and has served to isolate Iran at a time when they have said they are seeking international support against the United States for the killing of General Soleimani. So from an American perspective, if they want to draw negative attention to them on this important nuclear matter, they're doing just the right thing.
Narges Bajoli, in terms of drawing attention or negative attention, as the ambassador just said, Iran has clearly been trying to have some positive attention on it, accusing the U.S. Of an unlawful assassination. And they have been trying to rally their supporters across the region. What's the impact of Soleimani's death on Iran across the region and on Iranian allies across the region? Yeah,
I think the United States could not have made a bigger mistake as far as the person, the symbol of Soleimani is what he represented inside Iran and what he represented to Shia communities across the Middle East, I think is something that is extremely important. And that's one of the reasons I think that other American administrations, when they had the chance, did not assassinate Soleimani. But especially since 2013 and the fight against ISIS, it's important to remember that there was a very large media campaign created in Iran, sort of lionizing Soleimani and his fight against ISIS. Because again, it must be reiterated that ISIS's main goals during its fight was to, and one of its main enemies was the Shia. So Soleimani was seen as this national figure who stayed above the politics of the country. So even when Iranians were very much against the Islamic Republic and against a lot of the policies that the Islamic Republic has done, he was sort of seen as being above that and protecting the homeland from ISIS coming in.
Ambassador Crocker, Soleimani did take on ISIS and was seen, of course, as a national figure inside Iran, but the Americans had a very different view of him, and certainly those American troops, but also diplomats who served in Iraq, like you, had a different view of him, I take it.
The war between Iran and Iraq, if that's how we're styling it, did not start with the killing of Qasem Soleimani. It started ages ago in the early 80s with his predecessors and their proxies. I was in Lebanon at the time and got to see up close and personal the bombing of the embassy. I was in it in 1983, again brought to us by a predecessor of Soleimani and the militia that became Hezbollah. So General Soleimani for 2 decades has been heading one of the most lethal operating arms of the state we have ever seen. He has the blood of hundreds of American troopers in Iraq on his hand. Again, I got to stand at those ramp ceremonies, as we said, a final goodbye to dead soldiers. So there's no question that he was a blood enemy, if you will. All of that said, we have to have a strategy here. This is a long war. It's gone on for years. It'll go on for years more at an increased level, I think, after the Soleimani assassination. So the administration has to have a game plan, and that game plan will need to involve allies, a great deal of strategic patience, the utilization of some very smart people in the U.S. that know Iran and know how to work with others. None of these are hallmarks of this administration. So I worry very much that while taking a very bad actor off the field is not, in my view at least, inherently a bad thing, now what? And I'm not seeing any clear answers.
Narges Bajoli, what about for Iran? Now what? Where do they see this going, and how might they respond?
Yeah, I mean, look, a week ago, crowds like we saw the past 2 days in Iran were unthinkable because people were so angry at the state for the way it had cracked down against protesters in November. What the killing of Soleimani has done is it has brought together the population in addition to not just his assassination, but also Trump's tweets about targeting Iranian cultural sites. So what do we see in the future? This has been a gift to the survival of the Islamic Republic. I think what we will see in the future is that the Revolutionary Guard will focus its mission on trying to get the U.S. forces out of the Middle East, and it now has rallied forces both within Iran and outside of the borders to do so.
And Ambassador, to you quickly in the time we have left, there have been some fears within administration officials even that I've talked to, not only fear of unity within Iran, as Narges Bajoli just said, but also fear of U.S. troops getting evicted from Iraq because of this strike. How concerned are you about that?
I think the question of the U.S. presence in Iraq has a ways to play. The parliamentary resolution was not binding, and the session was boycotted by most Sunni and Kurdish deputies. There is no unanimity on the issue of U.S. presence in Iraq, partly because they know how crucial we were to the eviction of Islamic State. So I think it's time for a pause. Everybody take a deep breath and see where we can go with this diplomatically. And I also think it's very important for the administration to do what it can to take Iraq out of the middle. Their president the Iraqi president has...
Ambassador, I'm told that... I'm sorry, Ambassador. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I'm told we're out of time, so I'll just have to thank you there. Ambassador Ryan Crocker, Narges Bajoli, thank you very much.